Hi friends, welcome to Raising Lifelong Learners. I'm your host, Colleen Kessler, and this is the podcast where I encourage you to trust yourself and your differently wired kiddos as you help cultivate their curiosity, encourage them to discover the world around them, embrace who they are wired to be, all while helping them discover their passions, interests, and raise them to become the amazing adults they're meant to be. Hey, welcome back. This is episode 210. I am so glad that you are here. Today we're talking about one of my favorite topics. We are talking about building your family up as a team. We are all in this together, and the more we support each other and build each other up, the better off we will be in our everyday living and especially in our homeschooling. Are you ready for this one? It's going to be a great one. But first, let me just give a quick shout out to CTC Math. Thanks as always for being such a great sponsor. We really appreciate your support. Check out ctcmath.com. Now, pop your earbuds in, go for a walk, tackle the dishes, or just chill out for a little while. And let's get on with today's episode. Okay, so today we're going to talk all about being a team, being a family unit, and building that team mentality into your home. It is one of the best things you can do for yourself and your kids in order to be successful in anything you do and build a strong, resilient, emotionally intelligent family. Okay, so what do I mean by that? So first of all, you really are all in this together, whether you're all getting pulled in different directions because you have different likes and interests and abilities, or whether you're all on the same page. You're in it together because you live together. Something I remind parents of all the time. In fact, I just had a conversation this weekend with my own husband about this. You and your spouse are the only example on a day-to-day basis of what a healthy adulthood looks like. And while you're not going to be perfect all the time, believe me, I mess up a lot. I'm probably messing things up right now as we speak. You're still the main example for your kids about what healthy adulthood is like. And that means admitting when you're wrong, apologizing when you mess up, being there as much as you can so that your kids know that they can count on their parents, and so when they're parents, they help their own kids know that they can count on them. But also, you want to make sure that, like I said last week with self-care, that you're doing things for yourself as well, and you're continuing to grow into a fun, adventurous, interesting person who learns forever. It's why the site and the podcast are called Raising Lifelong Learners. We want to be growing and learning and discovering for our entire lives, and we want to model that for our kids. But we're all a team. We're all in this together. We want to encourage our family members, each one in our family, to take personal responsibility. Here's the thing. Oftentimes within a family unit, there are control issues or perception issues, right? Like I said, my husband and I had this conversation this weekend. We were talking about what we want our kids to see when they look at us and what we want our kids to see when they think about our family. And that sometimes it feels from each of our perspectives that one of us is doing all of the work, right? And one of us is more in control, and one of us makes all the decisions, and one of us doesn't make any decisions. And so we want to make sure that we are all adults and kids in the family taking personal responsibility for the things we are and aren't doing, kids and us. So are kids contributing? Are they helping out? Are they taking care of their own things? Are they participating in family events? As far as you and your partner go, are you each contributing to a piece of the parenting? Do you have a realistic expectation for one another? And are you giving each other credit for what each person is doing? Make sure you sit down at some point and you have a conversation about what each of you expects from the other and how you can see that happen and how you can support one another. I've told you guys this a few times over the last few weeks. I've struggled since Gosh, as of recording this, it's been 3 full months since my head injury. And I've struggled. And I said to my husband the other day, I just don't have the brain space to do another thing. And so I really need this from you. And we had a conversation about that. And so being open and honest, taking responsibility for your own failings or things that you're good at, and vice versa, making sure you're having a conversation and you're on the same page is super important. In the midst of all of that taking of personal responsibility, show compassion. Show compassion to yourself and to each other, each member of the family. We want to validate and empathize. We want everybody to know, right, that we've got their back. Stuff is hard for me right now. It's harder for me than it once was. I've always been mostly organized and focused on getting people where they need to go and still doing my work and still keeping the house and meals going. And I just don't have the cognitive capacity for that right now in light of this head injury. And so I need to show compassion to myself, and I don't always. In fact, my friend Shauna, who will be on the podcast next week, says to me all the time, cut yourself some slack. You've had a brain injury. You can't do the things that you once did in the same way you once did them. And we all need to show compassion to ourselves when we can and can't do certain things, but we also need to do that with each other. We need to show compassion to our spouses, our kids, and help them show compassion to one another. Validate their experiences, what they're going through, and empathize with them, and then help them see what they can do to be proactive about whatever it is they're feeling. So show compassion, take personal responsibility, create an alliance within your family. Here's the thing, your family is truly a team. You have each other's backs, and there's nobody who is going to love your kids like you do. There's nobody who's going to be there for longer for them than their siblings. And it's important for everybody to cheer each other on and lift each other up. So I've got one kiddo who's super into theater, one who's not so much into theater, but all of us still go to every show at least once during a run to support our theater kid. And my youngest is about to try basketball again for the second time. The first time he wasn't very successful because he fractured his wrist in the middle of that first season. And so he's going to give it another try. And you can believe that one or all of us will be at each of his games. And everybody in the family will go to at least one of his games during the season to cheer him on, because it's important that we support one another. And so you want to find ways to build up the fact that your family is a team. You don't have to love everything that everyone else loves and is interested in, but you do need to support them in those endeavors. And that's part of being a family team. We share, we cheer for each other, we lift one another up when we're feeling down, and we're constantly checking in with one another. And to go along with that, try to have a daily check-in. Make sure you touch base with each kid, your family as a whole, and your spouse every single day, even if it's just for a minute. Hey, I haven't seen you all day. How you doing? What's going on with you? Did you want to talk about anything? Are you getting excited about this weekend? What do you look forward to? What's going on in your life? How are your friends doing? Just check in at least one point during each day. My friend Sarah McKenzie talks about this when we speak together. Over the last couple of years, we've done a panel. And one of the things she says is that one of her children is very quiet, and she could easily go several days without talking to that kiddo. So she tries every day to put her finger on the pulse of each one of her kids, just to see if she knows how they are that day. Because if she doesn't, it means that she hasn't been paying enough attention, or she hasn't seen that child for the day. Let's do the same thing in our own homes. Let's make sure we know at least the overall mood. We can't solve every problem for everybody in the family all the time, but we can at least know how they are and what's going on with them. We can check in and touch base with them. So whether that's having a meal together when you can, we try to have one meal together. It's harder during some seasons than others, but we try to have at least one meal together. I try to touch base with my husband when he gets home from work, at least for a minute or two before we go on to our separate things and with separate kids. And I try to touch base with each kid at least once during the day. I'm not always successful. Sometimes I'm lopsided and I spend way more time with one kid over another. And I think that we want to just try to balance it out and average it out over the course of a week, kind of like we did when they were toddlers, right? When we wanted to make sure, doctors suggest you don't base a toddler's eating habits on their day-to-day eating. You want to kind of average it out over a week because toddlers go through all sorts of different phases throughout 1 week. It's the same thing with our communication. We don't want to neglect our children, but we also don't want to beat ourselves up if we're spending more time on one day with one versus another day with another. So find ways to have a daily check-in and then touch base more often. Maybe schedule a date with your kids or take your kids' friends out so you get to be a part of that and you see what's going on with them and how they interact with their friends. Hey there. Okay, so if you have been listening to the podcast for a while, you know how grateful I am to CTC Math. Not only is CTC Math our season-long sponsor, in fact, they've jumped on for another year. They're so supportive of raising lifelong learners and all of the topics and content that we bring to you. And it just allows us to continue to bring you great resources and guests and topics that can help you in your homeschooling differently wired kiddos journey. But CTC is the math program that I use and love with my kids. I am not only sponsored by them here, but I am a subscriber. I am a paying subscriber. I have been purchasing my subscription for the last several years, and I am a customer. I believe in CTC Math. I love it. It is what we use in our home. But you don't have to take my word for it. I thought it would be fun to share with you an email that I got recently. So first, just in case you're new to this, if you don't know, CTC Math is an online math curriculum that's perfect for homeschoolers, especially homeschoolers who have kiddos of different ability levels, because they do the teaching for you, but you get access in your subscription to all the grade levels. So your kids can hop around as needed, they can accelerate through if they need to, they can go back for some remediation in certain areas if they need to, but it's just great. Okay, I have to share this email with you. Sandy wrote, Colleen, thank you. Since you first highlighted this program, we have been using it with great success. Well, I say great success, but math still gives us what we call the math yawns. Still, math is happening, and I'm folding laundry and chiming in with good luck with your questions in my best Aussie accent. It is a terrific tool for us. My kids love it, and so do I. So thank you for sharing. Just in case you don't know, CTC Math is based in Australia. So yes, the lessons are taught with an Australian accent, and we love it because my kids think it's so cool to be taught in this beautiful, rich accent. But they're learning and they're accelerating at their own pace. And you don't have to just take my word for it. You can take Sandy's word for it too. And if you're a listener and you've tried CTC Math, I would love it if you would let me know how it's working for you. Just shoot us an email or a voicemail message. You can go over to raisinglifelonglearners.com/podcast. And on any of the show notes page, there is a link to a voicemail widget. There is also a link to the contact form, which goes directly to my email. All right, check out ctcmath.com. Thank them for sponsoring the content here and check them out because they are a phenomenal, phenomenal program. Okay, let's get back to today's episode. Have fun together. Have fun as a family. Have fun individually with your kids. Find little ways to add fun into the day. My kiddo today, so I record my podcasts now when I can and things don't interfere with the plan on a day where my two youngest kids go to a fine arts program for several hours and they're gone. And this morning I was dropping them off and my youngest, who's 9, was just in a funky mood. He didn't want to answer questions, and I was talking about the play that we saw over the weekend, and he was just stonewalling me. And so I knew he was feeling off, but I didn't know why. And so I just wanted to make him laugh and have the mood lifted before he went into a program where he was going to be away from me all day. So I was torturing him on the way into the the building, just giving him little tickles and making him giggle. And then I got him in a headlock and was rubbing his hair. And so by the time we got into the building, he was giggling and kind of pushing me away and dancing away from me and back and forth. And so we were doing like a little mock fight. It was fun and it lightened the mood. Find little ways to add in fun, find big ways, play games if your kids are into games, go outside and chase the birds or take the dogs for a walk or throw a frisbee or whatever. Just get little ways to add fun in with your kids during the day. If you can, hold family meetings as often as you can. Way back when my husband and I were first married, we would go to church on Sundays and then we would go to a coffee shop after church and we would compare our calendars for the week. Now, we did that every single week without fail for the first several years of our marriage. And then we had our first kid and we did it, kind of often, but not as regularly. And then I had some health issues between our first and our second child, which is why there's a large gap between them. And so we kind of got off the habit of doing that. And then we had 2 kids and then 3, and then we were homeschooling, and then we had a 4th kid. And it got harder and harder to do. But it's important to try to have times when your whole family comes together to put your finger on the pulse of the family and solve some problems. So if you can, hold family meetings and get together as a family and touch base about how things are going and what things could use improvement. Along these lines, have family date nights. Do something you do as a family together. So I've got several friends that have pizza and movie nights once a week, or some that go out once a month together and do something like a pumpkin farm or whatever. We did a lot when the kids were little. It's harder now as they're all involved in different things and we're pulled in a lot of different directions, but we used to do surprise rides. And what those were is I would just say, it's time for a surprise ride. Go get in the car, and they wouldn't know where we were going. Sometimes it would be something simple like apple picking or to a dinner place or to the shores of Lake Erie just to walk on the beach. Sometimes it would be like Great Wolf Lodge or Kalahari or Cedar Point or something like that, or an overnight, and their bags were already packed in the car and they didn't know about it. But throw in some family outings. Again, Sarah calls these just because we can days. And whatever you call them, whatever you do, just do them. We're trying, as we're getting in our routine for this fall. I'm recording this in our 2022-23 school year. We're trying to keep Fridays open as often as possible. We've got the program that the kids go to on Mondays. They have band rehearsals and practice on Tuesdays. Wednesdays, I do things in the Learner's Lab. I do live classes. Thursdays, one of my kids has voice and acting and a cappella. And then Fridays, we're trying to keep that open so that when we're between shows, we can do field trips on Fridays and get back to just enjoying each other because we homeschool and we can. So find ways to do that. Have family date nights. And then have date nights, regular date nights, individual kids, individuals, you and your spouse. Find ways to get together at least once a month if you can manage it. Now, I know this is harder for some of us than others, but try to find a time once a month when you take each of your individual kids out. This could be as simple as going for ice cream or a walk. My husband takes my youngest. My husband likes to hike on a trail near us. It's a paved trail. So he takes my youngest and he walks while my youngest rides his bike. And so find ways to incorporate one-on-one time at least once a month with each of your kids and your spouse if you can. And even if that's just watching a movie or a series or a show after the other kids go to bed, or rotating this. I know a family that I've met through convention seasons who has a lot of kids, and they rotate through during the month. Each kid gets one late night a month with mom and dad, and they watch a show or pop popcorn or play a board game. It's kids' choice, and they just get to stay up later. Now, some of the older kids don't go to bed or go to sleep, but they go in their rooms. Like when it's that younger kids' time, the older kids aren't up. It's just the one kid who's up with mom and dad. So you can get creative and find ways to incorporate one-on-one time with your kids when you're trying to incorporate these date nights. So being a team means you know, each of you has each other's backs, that you're there for each other to support and cheer on in the good times and empathize and validate and love on in the bad times. And they always have that soft place to land, somewhere to go to be heard and seen and supported. You can do this. You can be a team. You can form this unit in your family. And when you do, all of those other things kind of fall into place. So when we're talking about being a team, I'm just going to remind you, we're taking personal responsibility, kids and adults. We're showing compassion to one another as often as possible. We're creating an alliance together with daily check-ins, by having fun together, holding family meetings, having individual date nights and family date nights. We're doing things together and remembering that we're living life together. As a reminder, when you're thinking about all of this, you can totally do it. First of all, you're here, you're spending your free time listening to homeschooling podcasts and parenting podcasts, right? Trying to figure out how to be a better parent. Right now, you're already ahead of so many people. When you decide that you have stuff to learn about parenting, I still read parenting books all the time. I think it's so important to continue growing in that. And when you're doing that, you're already winning at this parenting game because you've got this vested interest and nobody's going to love them like you do. You totally have this. I promise you, it gets easier as your kids get older and as you find more support and more confidence in your homeschooling. You're not in this alone. There are tons and tons of us out there homeschooling quirky, differently wired kids, and it is possible. Reach out anytime you need support or you have a question. We might answer you directly in an email or a voicemail message, or we might use it as a prompt for a podcast. If there's a lot of people asking the same question, it'll become a new podcast episode or a resource on the site. So don't ever hesitate to reach out and ask your questions. Over on the show notes for this episode and on the contact form over on the site, there's a voicemail widget. You could leave us a 5-minute message asking us any question you have. We get back to everybody. We're a little bit behind, but we'll get caught up eventually, right? We will respond to every message. So reach out if you need support and poke your way through the podcast. We might have already answered that question as well, so you might find some more resources. Please feel free to forward this episode to anybody you think needs a reminder that they can do this homeschooling thing. Forward the emails that you receive, send a link to the podcast episodes you think would be most helpful, and if you get a chance, leave a rating or review. We really appreciate it. It helps Apple Podcasts get the word out about the podcast to other people who need it as well. All right. Have a great week. We will be back same time, same place next week. I hope you have a great week with your kids. Go on some adventures, love on them, build that family team and that alliance. You have got this. I am so proud of you. Talk to you soon. Bye for now.